How we doing out there today? Hopefully everybody is safe. Hopefully everybody is well kept. Nudge your friend, tell them hop on. We're about to get started in just a moment. If you're already on here, welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I hope you have your tea. I hope Outcast does something for you like it does for me. All righty. Asa says she's ready for some tea talk. Very good. Nudge your neighbor, say, hey, let's go ahead and log on, log on. It's about to go down. Going to get started in just a couple moments here. Give them another minute to hop on here. Hopefully, if you're driving safely. I know that you love the sound of my voice and the look of my face, but you do not have to look at this while you're driving. Please do not do that. Everybody travel safe and get to your destinations. And you can just vibe to the audio here. Once again, really happy that you guys were able to hop on. My replayers, thanks for hopping on. You're going to really enjoy what we have to talk about today. And we're excited to bring it to you. All righty. How we doing there, Mr. Figures? Welcome in. How we doing, Mrs. Bryant? Welcome in. Nod your partner. Say, hey, let's go ahead and log on. We're going to give you some practical principles and have a little fun along the way. Welcome in. Welcome in. All righty, folks. Welcome back to Tea Talk. I say welcome back because I saw you last month. And if you didn't see me last month, you can still see me on YouTube today. So welcome back once again to Tea Talk, a comfortable place for health dialogue. I'm your host today, Dr. Cooper. I'm going to go ahead and tee this thing off. Once again, Tea Talk is sponsored and brought to you by and presented by In Harmony Wellness Clinic. Holistic, personalized, and virtual care, meaning care at your front door. Just that easy. Please be minded that anything that I do share or my guests are sharing with you today is not constituted as medical advice, but for educational purposes. Please feel free to ask any good questions, and we'll try to answer with good answers along the way. I do want you to know that I've got my tea with me today. This tea is oregano basil tea. It is fantastic for many different things. Some of those things are it's antioxidant, it's anti-aging, it's anti-cancerous, antimicrobial, antifungal, antiviral. So basically, I'm drinking anti-tea. But this is really good tea. I recommend this to you and your family. I prepare this by steeping grains of oregano, grains of basil. I put some honey in there, some organic local honey, as well as lemon juice, and it's fantastic tea. It's a good tea during the daytime, and you can drink it with ice. So you can ice it. It could be a refreshing summer drink as well. But I highly recommend that you add this to your tea arsenal, as it is super beneficial for you for all of the reasons aforementioned. Well, today is this is our fourth or fifth tea talk, and I have an extremely special guest with me today. My guest, Mr. Ryan Kornegay, is an agriculturist and a son of the soil at heart. He serves as a program specialist with the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. He's also an educator who works with the local Boys and Girls Club, where he engages youth to learn about agriculture and food through the STEM programs. He is super driven to make agricultural changes in agriculture exciting for others and to help them recognize how food can bring us all together and working towards an equitable system for us all. Not only is this the case, but Mr. Ryan Kornegay also happens to be a good brother of a fantastic fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated as well. I would describe him as live, thorough, and sharp. And I'm just super excited to have him on with me today. So please make him feel welcome in the comments. If you have any questions, make him feel welcome. And we're going to dig into this thing. Mr. Ryan Kornegay, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Dr. Cooper. How you doing, sir? Appreciate it.
Fantastic. Even better now.
Hey, that's good. That's good.
Good. Well, we've been looking forward to this for about a month now, and we're really excited to dig into some of these things. We're going to give these folks some practical principles. We're going to get some understanding amongst our family groups and households, and we're going to do so in a timely fashion. Folks are trying to get places, but at the end of the day, they do want and need this information. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this thing off. I do have a very important question for you that I want to ask you, Mr. Ryan Kornegay.
Yes, sir.
I want to know, and this is a very important topic. You know, we're going to the grocery store, a lot of us, and we're picking through things. Some things say $4, some things say $4.75, and we're picking through things. And a lot of times our decision process is based off of the expense of our produce. And so we're in the store. We're like, well, I don't need that meat. It's, it's $1 more, or that meat says, it's natural food, or that meat says it's organic food.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing we want to know from you, Mr. Ryan Kornegay, is there a difference, or what is the difference between organic foods, natural foods, and, your standard economy foods?
Definitely. No. And thank you so much for that question, Dr. Cooper. So the interesting thing about that is this is one of the first things that I was able to learn about. I went to, if as Dr. Cooper probably has already told you, he's an alum of Florida University. That's where I got my degree in food science. And one of the first things I learned in food science is it's all about the labeling. A lot of these food companies really will label to make things look more marketable to you, but also there is a level of definition in between those different areas. So let's go ahead and start out with organic. Organic is a type of food, a food type that is regulated across the USDA. And things have to hit a specific definition for it to be labeled organic. But even with organic, you might see things that say 100% organic or made with organic products. Those, even within organic, there are different categories that it fits. So I want to kind of give you a little breakdown. So first of all, what is organic? When we're talking about that, organic produce is really the type that is certified and grown in soil that has not had any prohibited substances, so synthetic fertilizers or pesticides for over 3 years. So any soil that has not been using any of those things for over 3 years, organic produce can be grown from that. And so those synthetic fertilizers and pesticides are basically prohibited from anything that is labeled organic. Now, so let's just say you go to the grocery store and you have your organic apples. They were not grown in any soil that had any of those synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. Now, when we talk about meat, it's even different a little bit more. So as far as organic meat, it's regulated in the way that it's raised in living conditions that basically are accommodating to its natural behavior. So basically, think about chickens in their natural habitat. Think about cattle or cows in their natural habitat. They basically graze on grass. They graze on the things that they can find. They're not basically stuffed up with different things or fed different items. All right. And so these are animals that are basically fed what they would normally eat on a day-to-day basis. The other thing that's different about organic meat is that they do not usually have, they're not fed, they're not administered antibiotics or hormones. And so that's the difference there as well. Now, the difference is when we start talking about processed items. So you have also what you call organic processed foods, which are, we look at that foods that might be created. Let's just say you have a sweet potato chip, or you might find veggie straws that some people talk about like sometimes. So those veggie straws might be created with all different types of organic produce that were grown organically, and then the ingredients were taken to make another product, which are the veggie straws. Now then and I know this may seem like a lot, but then you have what you call made with organic food products. So all of the products that I shared before can use the organic label because they come basically with 100% organic products. But if you see something that says made with organic foods, that means they contain at least 70% organically produced products. All right. And so that 30%, there are 30% of products that are ingredients within those foods that are labeled made with organic foods that don't necessarily have to be considered organic. So let's just say you have crackers, you might have some type of chips, or you might have some type of processed food that may be made with 70% of organic items, but that other 30% may be some other fillers or things that are used to basically help preserve it. Now, the thing about it is, even with that other 30%, it's nothing that is going to necessarily harm you. All right. These are just items that are used to either help make sure that the shelf life of the food is stable longer. And then also that it's able to have the quality that you wanted to have. Now, to your next question. So that's organic. All right. So let's switch over to natural real quick.
Okay.
So natural, when you see things that say 100% natural, and the definition behind that, there's no specific standard definition, but an overview of what the USDA defines it as, and FDA. They look at products that contain no artificial ingredients or added color. It's minimally processed, and that means that the product was processed in a manner that does not really fundamentally change the product. But the label itself, as long as they take that label and they explain on that label with a statement about what they mean by natural, then, like, for example, they could say, no artificial ingredients, minimally processed. They have to explain it. As long as that's there, they will be good to go. So the thing about natural is, a lot of people see natural on a lot of all natural this, all natural that, on different labels for, processed foods or even some vegetables or produce. The thing about all organic is that food marketers, food producers, they can really put that label on there however they seem fit or however they deem fit. It's not regulated specifically because there's no specific standard definition from the federal side. So they can put all natural on there, and you might say, "Oh man, it's all natural. I know it's good. We're good to go." I don't have, and people kind of sometimes mix that up with organic, and those are two different things. So I do want to make that clear there. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, and I'm gonna stop there. We can discuss that, but I want to come back and also address the economy foods as well, as you asked too.
Well, you can go ahead and tell us about that right now.
Sure. So what you're kind of defining as economy foods, so the foods that aren't necessarily labeled organic or natural, is just the foods that you just see in the grocery store. You go to Winn-Dixie, or you go to Food Lion, Harvey's, whatever, and you see just regular foods there. Those are foods that are basically just grown by farmers. They're produced one place and they're shipped somewhere else. They may or may not have used a certain type of pesticides, and really the pesticide is used to basically kill off those weeds. What I want people to understand is that farmers do go through a lot of different stages and processes to make sure that, you know, they're able to make enough food, number one, because that's one of the biggest parts. But number two, that food is safe. Now, and I know we'll get into this a little bit later on, but because farmers who make organic foods have to go through all those steps, and, you know, we can't use any weed killers, we can't, you know, use any of those synthetic fertilizers, since they have to take so many more steps to make sure that food is regulated and is basically set to the T. Usually you find organic foods are a little bit more expensive than what you would call economy foods, because farmers who are making just basic fruits and vegetables are basically just doing what they can to make sure they can make enough, and also to make sure that it's still healthy for consumers as well.
So that's what I want to ask you about there. And you said some really powerful things just now, Mr. Kornegay, because I was listening to the words you use. You use words like minimally. You use words like made with organic.
Right.
And what it implies is that the average consumer has to be a little bit more responsible than they typically think they should. Meaning, if you're not at a stage of reading the levels, you know, that's where you're going to see a lot of your bang and major improvements. If you're not at a stage where you're reading the labels of the foods that you're buying or investing in, there's a lot that could be gleaned from it, and you may be missing out on, you know, some major health benefits. And so he just used some very important words, folks. He said made with organic feed or organic supply, minimally processed. So these are very important words to look for. But you also alluded to the fact that the process by which food is produced also can dictate how expensive it may be. So my next question that I want to ask you is, what are some of the things that makes products more expensive amongst what we were just describing? Right.
So number one, and I'll go back to the organic versus, you know, economy foods as we talked about. Number one, it takes a lot for a farmer to make sure that weeds are not sucking up all the nutrients and good things in the soil that plants are going to need to grow to be their best self. Okay. So that's one of the main things. There's that labor aspect that farm workers have to go through to ensure that they are able to produce and grow those foods in a way that is able to still able to make sure it's processed correctly. Then there's a storage aspect of it. One of the things about organic foods versus, you know, economy foods, you know, you and I know we're going to end up touching on this at some point, but let's go ahead and enter GMOs, genetically modified organisms, into the chat. All right. So those foods really, and a lot of people, when they hear GMO, they think somebody's shooting some type of chemical in the seeds or into the vegetable. And that's not what it is. That's literally not what it is. But
get your hand off my tomato.
Right, exactly. So you know, it's like this, the syringe and all that. That's not what it is. But genetically modified foods, what happens with them, they are modified so that they can, you know, last longer, have a longer shelf life. They're used so that they can survive temperatures and weathering a whole lot more. Now, when you have organic foods, the problem is as soon as you harvest them, you got a clock. You want a clock, literally, because those foods that are grown organic, they do not have that structure to help keep them fresh as long. All right. They don't have that structure to basically, you know, keep them protected from the weathering or temperatures or even the traveling that they might have to do. Whereas foods that might be genetically modified are foods that, you know, had some type of fertilizer or pesticides used on them. They have that barrier to kind of help protect them and keep them lasting a little bit longer. So there's that aspect of, you know, traveling, you know, the distance and distribution, how long it takes to get from one place to another, and how much can we keep it at a certain level of quality. You know, let's just say organic food is created in Tallahassee, Florida, but you're trying to get it, up in North Carolina somewhere. So there's going to have to be a expedited process somewhere there for that organic food from here to get to you, and that comes with a price. Whereas, foods that can be saved by genetically modified processes can take a little bit more time to get to you because they're not going to go bad as fast, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes plenty sense. And what it sounds like you're saying is you get what you pay for. And, when we're talking about the middleman, there's definitely a price to some of the, major benefits we're looking for in our produce. The major price. Definitely. And just like in most things, the more of something is distributed, the more of it's produced. A lot of times you can see some of those costs decrease.
Right.
But we're in a time where organic is extremely popular and has become more popular.
Very popular. Yes.
It's becoming very popular. And so in the beginning of things like this, typically you're going to see a major expense, but I expect in the future for it to become less expensive. And as it becomes more of a standard living process or a standard expectation, right. I expect the prices to go down. What do you think? Do you think the prices may go down in the future?
So, with that, I'll say this.
Don't give me bad news, Ryan.
I'm not going to give you exact bad news because, I can't determine the future exactly. But what I will say is that in the field of agriculture and really just our world as a whole, we're in a game. We're in a really, really, quick game right now. We're trying to find a way to feed a very, very fast growing population. Wow. That's expected to reach 10 billion people by 2050, right? And that is part of the reason why agriculture is looking at ways, how can we make sure that we extend the shelf life? How can we modify foods to make sure that we can get everybody access? Because the problem is right now, a lot of people do not have access to food whatsoever. Like just literally do not have access, and I can speak a little bit towards that because I grew up in, very rural, small town. And it took me going to FAMU and studying food science to realize that I grew up in what we call a food desert because we don't have a grocery store within about 15, 20 miles. All right. But we have the corner store, that has the chips and the sodas and stuff. And a lot of people would think that, rural areas, there's farmland and all this. They have a lot of access to produce, and that's not the case. That's like literally not the case. And so when we talk about that, because we're trying to feed people and find ways to feed them more, I honestly do believe that, GMOs are not going away anytime soon. I will say that. Okay. I think you will probably have organic foods that are still going to be growing. I would hope that we find a way to streamline the processes and how it's produced so that the price levels can come down. And maybe what that looks like is people who have, greenhouses or different types of farming strategies that are going to help us to still create it organically, but hopefully bring that price down. But I will say for sure, if you're trying to go to organic space, it's going to be harder to try to find stuff. So let me say it like this. So let's just say you like I like strawberries or I like tomatoes. Or give me a fruit that you like. What's one that you like?
Kiwi.
All right. So kiwi. Now kiwi, I can't tell you exactly where that's growing right now, but let's just say we cannot grow a kiwi in, Washington, D.C. or Michigan in the mid of January, December. All right. Mm-hmm. And so if you go into Washington, D.C. or Michigan, if we really kept to that organic strategy, unless we're able to find ways to ship that food really quickly, you're not going to be able to have access to kiwi like you do now, going to the grocery store and always finding it on the shelf, because those foods are not going to grow organically necessarily. They're out of season. Exactly. They're out of season. And so if we do try to go back to that organic strategy, I think that really the what we need to try to find is a balance between it all to where, going back to that whole term of moderation, I think if we talk about that, there's going to be times where we're going to have some foods that, may not be what we consider organic, but that's not necessarily bad, because when we talk about what those foods have, they still have the same nutritional quality that organic foods do. So that's where you have that twist there. So I don't see it going towards that organic so fast, but I mean, you never know.
Well, so first, where we are right now, we've answered some fantastic questions so far. You've told us the difference about organic foods versus natural foods versus economy foods. We've talked about what makes it so expensive, the process by which these things are manufactured, traveled, maintained, and grown. Right now, if you haven't done so, go ahead and click on the subscribe button. We definitely don't want to lose the opportunity to continue to give you this kind of information. We will continue to provide this kind of information to our communities. Once again, right now you're with Mr. Ryan Kornegay, and we're talking about fresh foods. How can we get and maintain fresh foods? Now, we're getting questions that are coming in. I definitely don't want to overlook our questions. I want to make sure that we're answering questions. And if you get questions along the way, please drop it in the comment section so that we can answer them at a good time. We definitely want to make sure we answer your questions. I see a question here, and the question from Mr. Figures here is, are the foods that are treated with pesticides and protective chemicals, are they harmful to the consumer? And possibly, are there any diseases that they could be causing? And I think this is a great question. What is your experience with that so far, Mr. Kornegay?
So my experience with this, and just kind of to give you a little bit of insight into how these things are regulated. So when we talk about, pesticides and protective, chemicals or things that are used to help food preserve for longer or to grow, those things have to basically meet a certain level of basically where that residue has gone off before it can be sold. So to answer the question directly, no, those foods that you find in the grocery store that may have been grown with pesticides or things of that nature, they're not harmful for you because, number one, they wouldn't be able to be sold in the store if they were. The USDA and the FDA do a really great job of trying to regulate some of those things to make sure that there are not, and also the EPA. The EPA also is a part of that because that's environmental protection, making sure that those residues from any type of pesticide does not enter your body. And so I actually just read a report, and I'm going to share. There's a few links that I told Dr. Cooper I want to share. Hopefully, I think you can probably put this in the description later on. But there's a study that was done that was shown that over 42% of some of the fresh produce that was tested, I think the study was in 2019, showed that it was non-detectable levels of, any of that residue or pesticides when they just tested it directly. Now, what I will tell you is that you want to make sure that you wash your produce, just like you wash your body. Make sure you wash your produce anytime before you get ready to use it, because number one, it's going to get the dirt off, but also, if by some chance there are some residues on it, you can wash it off by using water, or some people might want to use. Some people use vinegar because I think it's a little bit stronger, but really water will do the job, washing off that extra residue that you might have. But to answer the question directly, there is a tolerance level that the EPA regulates these things at, and if it exceeds that, they will literally stop somebody from selling, growing, and being able to provide those goods to people.
Wow.
But if there is there's a level to where those things are not detected, those things are able to be sold, and those are some of the goods that we see. So you still get that nutritional content, but they do not cause diseases in a way that will cause you harm.
Awesome. All right. So you heard it here first from Mr. Ryan Kornegay himself. I'm going to ask him some more questions. Let's dig into how we can make this lifestyle beneficial for ourselves. Mm-hmm. We know there are benefits. There are certainly benefits to spending more on your foods. And then if you cannot, that's okay, because there's a lot of benefits that you can get from these foods, and you can still glean a lot of nutrients. But we want to know, Mr. Kornegay, how can I maintain my produce in my home longer and cleaner? Mm-hmm. What's the way I can make my things or my foods, my produce, last on my shelf longer in general?
So that's a great question. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing this. Now, what I will tell you is that some methods to keeping your produce to last longer may change the quality of it, but it will also give you what I would say is a new product. So I'm going to start off here. Number one, water. Water is important to us as humans and our bodies being able to drink it, cleaning us out. But water is also very vitally important to produce as well. So a few of you may have seen it's been going around like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of that. People putting avocados in like a case of in like a container of water, right?
Okay.
And usually, if you leave an avocado out, probably 3-4 days, it's gonna start getting real brown and mushy. It's gonna lose its greening. People have been putting these basically, and so people have been putting these avocados in these containers of water, and they come back like weeks later, maybe sometimes a month later. That avocado is just as still as green when they cut it open as it would have been on like the day that they bought it. And so that water, what it's doing,
by putting it in water,
and because what that water is doing is keeping it hydrated, it's also protecting it from the elements. So let's just say, you leave that avocado or even a cucumber or something like that out on the table, it's basically not protected from the elements of the air. Because number one, air is great for us, but for fruits and vegetables, it's soaking up the water. Okay. If you leave vegetables out for a while, you may come back and see, usually this kind of starts having wrinkles and stuff, but think about it like this. It's kind of taking it's basically kind of making that fruit or vegetable evaporate. That's why that wrinkle is there a little bit. So the moisture is leaving that fruit or vegetable. But if you put it in water, it keeps it crisp. It keeps it a little bit firm. Now, that's not to say that water is going to keep your fruits or vegetables, crisp and firm and all that for months and months on end. No, don't do that, because right? But even, for example, so you have people. So and one of the tricks that people talked about, I didn't even know this until I was in school. But one of the tricks that people use, for people who like caterers, who do like the veggie plates with carrots and celery, now if they have to buy that stuff beforehand, how do they keep it looking so crisp and fresh? They put those carrots, they put that celery in a bowl of water. Wow. And then they go and cut it, or they can even cut it already, put in that bowl of water. It keeps it plump. It keeps the produce hydrated, and so that when you get it on your plate, it looks like it was just picked, but it wasn't, because the water kind of helped it stay clean there. So that's one end. Now,
almost too simple.
It sounds too simple, right? But think about it. A lot of people do not think about water. Really, if you put it on produce, now don't go putting water on everything that you're trying to keep for a long time. But for produce, like cucumbers, tomato, all that type of stuff, fruits and vegetables, all that stuff. Now to the other end, when you have other produce, and let's just say you don't want to put it in water, but you might have a surplus or something. Let's just say apples. One of the other ways you can do it. Now, you may not get all of the, great nutrients and the plus sides of eating a fresh apple, but you can take that apple and put it in a dehydrator and still get a lot of the nutritional content that you would if you were eating a regular apple. But I say that to say, if you let's just say you have a whole lot of apples in your house, you're not trying to waste them. You don't want to throw them away. If you have a dehydrator, that's a great way to go ahead and dry that fruit, and not just with apples, but literally dried fruits as a whole.
Wow.
You can dry them out and still get a certain level of the nutritional quality, and that fiber is still there, to help with your digestion, to keep you regular, right? That fiber is still there, so you can when you eat it later on, that nutritional quality is still there. The other piece of that is, now let's just say, okay, we talked about produce, but other goods. You want to be able to keep food fresh. You want to keep it away from, I'm gonna just say it again, oxygen, or keep it away from the elements or the air, if you will. Because what happens is, if you keep it out, food becomes what we call rancid. All right. Mm-hmm. And that's basically, what we're talking about food that gets stale, and, you leave that chip bag out for 2 days, it's going to be a little different, because that elements have come in and soaked up the quality that was there before. All right.
Sure.
And so Ziploc sealing or vacuum sealing foods. That's meat. You can do that with meat. You can do that with dried fruits or vegetables. You can do that with even cooked foods. You want to be able to seal it up so that it's not exposed to the elements. And then also, of course, literally, and the people, so I teach food preservation to the kids at the Boys and Girls Club. And when I talk about preservation, it's like, what's that? And literally one of the things we forget about is food preservation is literally putting your food in the refrigerator or the freezer. And I want to say this as a food safety person at heart. Please do not leave food on the table. Okay. Let's put that thing in the refrigerator because number one, depending on if it's cooked or not, you putting yourself up to some potential foodborne illness possibilities there, number one. So put that in the refrigerator. If you know you're not about to eat it soon, put it in the freezer because it's going to last you months longer than it would, with you putting it in the refrigerator or, definitely not on the table. Table is going to last maybe a day or two. Don't even leave it out there that long. Fresh produce is fine out on the table, but as I said earlier, if you want to keep it fresh and crisp, put it in that water and put it in the refrigerator. But I'm gonna stop there.
That's awesome right there, because what you said, not only does it secure our nutrients in our food better and make our food taste better, but also this is going to save our pockets, because when you think about trying to eat on a budget and trying to maintain a certain lifestyle of quality foods, oftentimes this comes down to how well can you preserve the foods that you're buying.
Right.
And if you can preserve your foods using the aforementioned ideas that Mr. Kornegay just described, with putting your food in water or putting your produce in water, dehydrating your food, vacuum sealing your food, and refrigerating your food, this is a great practical strategy for extending the life of the produce itself, and also saving you some dollars.
Right.
So if you're going to take on this life of reading the labels, as we talked about earlier, you're probably going to want to invest in strategies that maintains your produce better. And this could possibly be the difference of you deciding to live out this healthy life, or you going right back to fast food. This could be the difference maker, because what I find in clinical practice, Mr. Kornegay, I find that people, they get tired of what they're doing really quickly. And we're in an age that is really attracted to instant gratification. We're really attracted to fast foods, socially and then physically, and so one of those reasons is because we're looking for convenience. And the only way we can beat out this idea of convenience is we have to really look forward to what's in our refrigerator or what we've been buying to put on our table.
Right.
And if you really get involved in that process and really, really appreciate what you're doing by going to the grocery store, preserving things the way that Mr. Kornegay is saying, there's a certain level of excitement and certain level of pride that you get from engaging in this process. And it can really be, the difference, of a healthy family versus a family that's struggling with a lot of things.
Right.
And so if you haven't said anything else, man, you've already knocked it out of the park. I've taken so many notes.
And can I add something to that real quick?
I'm going to need more paper. I'm going to need more trees if I can put down any more notes. What's that?
No, I want to, because you just really harped on something there that's really important, talking about the pride in it. And I want to just put this point out there.
Yep.
Our ancestors, our grandparents, they had the game plan. They had the blueprint. They did. Because, I'm thinking when I grew up with my great grandmother next door, she had, these canned goods on the back porch, squash, cucumbers, pickles, tomatoes, and okra. I mean, stuff stored up. And what she had been doing was processing this food so that, okay, I grew these tomatoes and all this okra here in the summer, but I need something to last me for the wintertime.
Yeah.
So there was that pride in making her own products, but this was going to be something that she could eat months down the road, and it was saved by, so canning is another process you can use to keep produce for a longer period of time, and then, even pickling, that's one activity I do with my kids, but that's, literally preserving foods and doing it in that way, because honestly, people go to the grocery store and buy a can of tomatoes and a can of this. Why not just go ahead and do it yourself and eliminate the food waste in your house? And and all you got to do is process a little bit yourself, can it, vacuum seal it, put it in water, whatever it is, and you can save it for a longer period of time for yourself. But I just had to say that because you hit the nail on the head with that pride, sense of pride.
Yes, absolutely. That's major. And he's giving us two more options there. We can can it and we can pickle it. And pickling, of course, is going to be more beneficial to your gut bacteria and microbiota. I'm gonna leave you alone on that, but
we ain't got to get on that.
Be on the lookout for some information on that coming soon. Now, I want to dig into the next thing here, and once again, thanks, folks, for logging in here. We have a couple more questions that we're going to have Mr. Kornegay answer for us. Once again, this is Tea Talk with Dr. Cooper, a comfortable place for health dialogue. We're doing this every month, and we're bringing the conversation to you in a comfortable place. Please like and subscribe. Both of them. Do both. Please like and subscribe. Yeah. And you'll see my face pop up every now and then with some really good practical principles. And we definitely want to get that right to your doorstep. So please do that before we go any further. Thank you again, Mr. Kornegay. We're going to get into the last stretch of this here. Really good question here. What is the future of agriculture? I know you've already kind of alluded to some things that could make agriculture, one, more cost efficient, but also, healthier for us. You mentioned greenhouses. You mentioned other ways, that may be coming up in the future that may be a major benefit to us. So what do you have for us? What could be coming up next?
So number one, I have to start off here because when I hear about the future of agriculture, I've already alluded to feeding 10 billion people by 2050. But the other thing that comes up for me when I hear this is artificial intelligence and drones.
Wow.
And a lot of people do not think about that when they hear agriculture, but literally farmers are right now, engaging and learning how to use artificial intelligence. They're learning how to use drones to make sure that they are able to grow our food in a more efficient way. And also in ways that will hopefully help them to probably save some dollars as well down the line. So they're out using drones right now. There are tech companies who are literally looking to engage with farmers to try out these different technologies. So that's one move. The other, I would say, is diversity and inclusion. For a lot of people, if you don't know, agriculture is the field is not very diversified. I'll say it like that. People of color do not make up, let's just say people of color don't make up a good bit of individuals who work in the agricultural field. And if they do, usually it's not in the spaces where the decisions are made, like in companies and different agencies like that. There are few and far in between. So what I will say is that agricultural companies, the federal government, all of these entities are really understanding the importance of diversity and inclusion and having a diverse workforce, but also having individuals at the table who are making these decisions about food, where food comes from, how much it's going to cost, how we can market food to different communities. They understand that we need people at the table who have different ideas, who have different perspectives from different walks of life. So we can't have the same people who are going to be yes men or look the same way or think the same way. We need more people, Black men, Black women, Asian men, Asian women, Hispanic men, all of these people at the table so that we can have a diverse understanding of how we're going to address this issue of food. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what color you are, we all have to eat. Yes. And these companies want to make sure that we're following practices and that we're engaging with individuals that we can make sure that we have that diverse aspect there. So I would say diversity, inclusion, I would say agriculture is moving towards that area. And then last but not least, I'm just going to kind of end off with, as I shared before, really science and technology as a way as well, but on the aspect of genetically modified foods and also finding ways to decrease what we call food insecurity. And food insecurity is really when individuals don't have a stable access to fruits and vegetables. Those are the individuals who may live in the food desert, who don't have the ability or availability of fresh produce. And so we're trying to find ways through, finding ways to, number one, preserve food in better ways so that more people can get it. We're trying to eliminate food waste, which is not just people throwing food away, but also, farmers who have too much of a good and they just can't literally get it out. All right. So trying to find ways to fix the food system to where more people can have access to food. And then, of course, genetically modifying things so that they can be resistant to climate change, because climate is changing if we're going to be real about it. And that also is going to help us not just feed people here in this country, but in countries across the world. So finding ways to modify foods to be able to be more accessible to people as well.
Man, I think you just knocked it out. Absolutely. And it's interesting what you said kind of mirrors, it runs parallel with the question that Mr. Johnson just asked us. Mm-hmm. And we're thinking about the idea of making food more accessible, to populations. You mentioned food desert. Mm-hmm. There's a comment or a question down there that's asking about urban agriculture. I want to know a little bit more about, how, if I'm in in an urban area or an area mm-hmm. that appears to have low access to foods, right. I want to know from you, what are some ways I can access those kinds of foods near me?
So that's a really loaded question, number one. And I will say, starting here, in urban areas, it's really, and I will say this too, urban agriculture is already a hot topic, and it's growing even more because, number one, there's even more of a disconnect in urban areas to people understanding where their food comes from. Now, a lot of people, you may see an influx of community gardens in urban areas these days. So number one, I would say to try to find a local community garden or farmers market in your area that would be able to provide you access to that food. Number two, there are a lot of government programs or even not even just government programs, but companies that are looking to invest in urban agriculture in ways that, so let's just say, for instance, anybody who might have a proposed idea or concept, there's funding available for grants for individuals to bring together aspects of urban agriculture to build out community gardens, to build out hopefully more stable farmers markets. So for individuals who might want to build up a farmers market in those areas, that's one area of interest. Like I said, it's a hot topic and it's an area that people are really looking to fund. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. When we're talking about how to access food, it really depends on what community you're in, because what's happening or what's working, let's just say in Jacksonville, is not going to be the same thing that would work for Atlanta, for instance. But ultimately, I would say try to find those community gardens, those local community gardens, or individuals who are working in that urban agriculture space, who might have the ability to sell produce, or, they'll know where potential farmers markets might be. And then also finding the grocery store that might be most local to you. Now, one thing that is interesting about urban agriculture that is kind of changing the landscape a little bit. I talked about a bit earlier about how, here in my hometown is rural. We have a lot of corner stores. Well, a lot of corner stores in urban areas are taking on this aspect of providing fresh produce. And so you might not see it in a lot of places right now, but they're trying to build that a little bit more. There are programs that are supporting corner stores who want to provide fresh produce. And so this may be something that you will see in the future a little bit more, that corner stores might provide that fresh fruits and vegetables that you will be able to access, that if you don't have a grocery store in your area. So that's one other area of aspect for urban agriculture also.
That's awesome, my friend. That is awesome. So as you heard, folks, make sure you can identify where your local community gardens are, farmers markets, and be encouraged that there are grants out there that are supplementing the process for stimulating these healthy produce in your town, in your area. And hopefully, there are websites for these things. I don't know if there's, available, governmental websites. You can stop me if there are, Ryan. if there are, but hopefully there is something to that aspect that can get you access as well.
Yeah. So I will say just here real quick, and I'm
Okay.
as I said earlier, I'm speaking on behalf of myself tonight,
Okay.
not for the agency that I work for, but the agency that I do work for, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, does provide funding for grant programs across a myriad of different aspects in agriculture. So if you look up the National Institute of Food and Agriculture on Google, or NIFA for short, as we call it, NIFA, there are a multitude of grant programs for beginning farmers, veteran farmers. There are programs for nonprofits. There are programs for researchers. There are programs for churches or in other religious organizations. There are literally a multitude of different programs that fund things from, it can either be from you want to start a community garden, maybe you want to educate youth and potentially have an after school program, maybe you want to start some type of food project in your community.
Okay.
There are different projects there. So check out the National Institute of Food and Agriculture.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, I want to know about what you have going on, sir. I want to know how we can get involved. Do you have any current programs that you may be working on that we can be a part of, or that we can benefit? Or how can we find what you're doing and make sure that what you're doing is going to the next level and that we're supporting? So do you have anything going on right now that we need to know about and that we need to uplift?
Yeah, so I would say number one is really trying. As I shared earlier, and as you share also, Dr. Cooper, I work with the Boys and Girls Club. Engaging with them, trying to teach youth about agriculture, trying to teach them about STEM. And one of the things that I created, really off of research that I did in graduate school, was what I call the Food Science Academy. And really, what I'm doing there is connecting students to where their food comes from, learning about the food system. Literally from seed to plate. And then also, as I kind of talked about here today, we talk about food preservation. We talk about food culture and history. And then I talked to them about the scientific aspects. So we do food preservation through the process of them putting on their food science hats. And I teach them about what the literal science is behind pickling processes. All right. And so they'll make their own pickle products. They have to market it. They have to come up with their own flavors, and they have to sell it to us. And then we do a sensory analysis test or taste test at the end. So I'm doing that here with my local Boys and Girls Club. I've done it virtually with some individuals. So I'm trying to build out more opportunities like that. And with that comes not only am I trying to get kids to understand where their food comes from and understand agriculture, but I'm also trying to get them to recognize careers across food, nutrition, and health. All right.
Okay.
So what I really would like to do is really get these students opportunity to engage with, or see and hear from individuals like yourself who work in the health sector, and who've been there, done that, and who can really give them an opportunity to be a visual to look after, saying, maybe that's a path that I want to go into one day. So I'm trying to really engage students to do that a little bit more. I'm trying to build out a few more programs to where I can teach them about different aspects of food a little bit more. And then also I'm trying to transition into really kind of health and how that connects back to health as well. And really also understanding how you can use food, health, and other components as a way to impact your community. So I'm really trying to get them engaged in that community work too. So if you have if you're interested in engaging with youth, if you're interested in learning more about the Food Science Academy, please feel free to reach out to my email, as Dr. Cooper shared here. I'd love to engage with you and even share more with more students about the Food Science Academy, because I think it's an opportunity for them to engage in hands-on experiences.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, for that information. I told you guys, this guy is live, thorough, and sharp.
That's you, my brother. That's you.
This was really good. We're getting comments from folks, and they're saying this was, really, really good practical information and potent information. This is stuff that folks needed to hear and was looking for. So I thank you, sir, for hopping on here and sharing this time with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was a great experience.
Awesome, folks. this is what we do here. This is Tea Talk. I'm so glad that you hopped on with us. We're doing this every month, so you need to tune in and listen to what we have going on. I know there's something that we'll be talking about that you could use in your everyday life. And while you're still on here, if you haven't, click on that subscribe button and like this video and share it with somebody that you think could use this, because we've got to take our communities back to health, and this is how we're going to do it. So signing off. Thanks again for hopping on. Be blessed. Talk to you soon.